Deep within all of his personal triumphs and life's unavoidable scoreboard of ups and downs, Keith Wetzler has always had that one common denominator in his life. The now senior director and executive producer at Churchill Downs Broadcasting has always felt the urge to prove himself. He had to prove himself as a walk-on football player at Western Michigan, and it's that walk-on mentality that has been so crucial to the creation and growth of his career through the industry. Even much more fun and special considering the support that he has amidst his family and friends. Today, he joins me to share his story. Unfiltered on the Honest Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is a sports media podcast that highlights the human sides of those who work in the industry. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Now that you've done that, let's get to it. Can't tell him how much I'm grateful for him and that he supports this channel and has had so many of his own colleagues on. Now it's time for you, Keith, to join me. I'm excited to have you on. Thanks so much for being a part of this and being on board with this project.
Well, thanks, Brian. I enjoyed, join the club here. So appreciate it.
The club that you're also a part of is that you played college football, if I'm not mistaken, at Western Michigan. You were a walk-on. At that age, how hard did you have to fight to garner that respect from coaches? And here you are trying to make your voice known.
Well, I didn't play a lot. I practiced a lot. Let's put it that way. But still, I think the coaches really, respected me because I always came to camp in shape. I tried hard, but it took me a little while to realize that being small didn't make up for being slow. So, it got to a point where it's like, hey, let's just focus on, on studies and, figure out a career, which fortunately ended up being television for me.
To get to television and making that your career, you had to undergo a lot of sacrifices and reading more about your story and just working as a bartender in the time in which you were beginning that pursuit of television. How were you able to see the end goal or see a vision and at the same time early on realize that there are other things that need to happen, that you have to continue to keep working hard with the goal that at one point you'll get that breakthrough?
Well, I don't know. In college, I took, I was one of those guys who didn't know what they wanted to do. So, like everybody, you go into business, and that that didn't excite me. So then I went to public relations, and in public relations, I took this class on television broadcasting. So, and I really liked the professor. Tom Pagel was his name, and I don't know. He just got me inspired by it, and ended up doing a internship for Pro Am Sports System, which was one of the first regional sports networks in the country, which then later became Fox Sports Detroit, and now Bally's Detroit. But anyway, so I did an internship for them. It was covering the Detroit Tigers, which I was a catcher as growing up. I wore number 11 for my idol Bill Freehand, who I ended up working in the booth with. So all that stuff, those childhood dreams, you're meeting your childhood stars that you followed, and it was just very exciting. So it was just something I really wanted to get into. So after college, I moved to New York. It was like I talked to a guy from CBS. I was doing runner for Lions football in Detroit. So he said, well, you got to be in New York. So I was like, well, after graduation, I went to New York, didn't have a job, suitcases under my arms. It's like, gonna make it, so I had to tend bar. I was tending bar in college. So I tended bar there and started working freelance for ESPN and just working my way into the business.
Having those experiences where there wasn't at the beginning this red carpet laid out in front of you, how do you think, looking now and what you've been able to do in this industry, that would have been a blessing in disguise, knowing the challenges at that time that you had to put yourself through to make it, but ultimately how that came back to help you in the end?
Well, I think a lot of that is due to my parents and my background, a very blue collar, hardworking, childhood. I mean, don't get me wrong. I grew up on a lake, had a great childhood, boats and snowmobiles. So, but we still had to go out and weed the garden and mow the lawn and do that stuff. But it was just that hard work ethic that I was just like, put your nose down and do it, learn from it. Some of these people, some colleagues, they grew up in the business. I
Sure.
didn't. I had to learn it. It was a whole new thing for me to go through. Just learn stuff by trial and error. So it's just like one of those things, like anything in life. If you just put your mind to it and have the will to succeed and keep moving forward, no matter what happens, I mean, you can eventually do it.
How often do you feel like you hear what your parents told you as a child about the work ethic and putting your mind to things that seems to be so pertinent to even today, where you still hear those early childhood messages that they gave you and how that has influenced you even to what you're doing now?
Well, I just hear it, you get out there and do it, or your dad will be home and talk to you, and stuff like that. So those are the messages, that I remember. But I think it's more of a, like anything you gain, that's just part of who you are, and you don't realize it at the time. Through my career, it was like things happen so gradually. You learn things. It's not like you're here one day and they're the next. It's like when you haven't seen someone in a while and either they've lost a lot of weight or gained a lot of weight. If you're with them every day, you don't really see that until after a while. Same thing with a career, or the way you were raised. It's like, over time, and then you realize, boy, I've really went from A to Z, or whatever letter that is in between there, but you don't realize it at the time. You have to step back and really look at it and go, yeah, I've actually done this and that and the other, and gained this experience and able to do this, better than when I started out.
How has your wife, how has she helped you step back and look big picture and allowed you, while you're in the moment, you're in the minutia, the gradual improvement, but then for you to step back and really get a better look at things thanks to your wife?
Well, my wife is, well, a godsend in this. TV is not the easiest business for spouses. There's a lot of travel, there's a lot of weekends, nights, works. So you have to have an understanding spouse. So, and believe me, it hasn't all been champagne and roses. So there's been a lot of tough times, and my wife has carried us through there. So it has really been a partnership where we've worked together. Whatever we had to go through the time, we've done that. So she's been a very understanding, and hopefully I paid some of that back by I don't know, doing my part.
How does she tell you and show you how much she appreciates you?
Well, uh I don't. She knows that we have a great relationship. Started dating her when we were 15 years old. So,
Wow.
well, yeah, there's a long story there. So we go back a long way. So, she understands what I do. And it's not for everybody, like I said. So, she's helped me through, and I understand her. It's not her just telling me, but me, appreciating what she's done for our family and worked along the way and all that. So, a lot of it could be it's unsaid,
Yeah.
maybe we should talk about it more, but, I respect what she does and what she's done, and I'm sure she does the same.
The fact is, you've gotten so much respect in what you've done from a career perspective as well. And it goes without saying in the household how you all respect each other as a family. But in gaining that respect in that industry that we're in building that reputation, what do you find is most important for you as a reputation standpoint is concerned? When people think of you, what do you want them to know about you first and foremost, about who you are, the man you are, and the kind gentleman that you are?
Well, that's probably it. I think, I mean, I hope that I represent to people who report to me and other people in the business that, first you want to be a good person. I've always respected people that I've worked for that, start with Brian Williams, who's been on your show. I worked with
Yeah.
him as a freelancer, Hammond Reynolds at Fox Sports South, Ken Rosen, Daryl Lepick at NHL Productions, but all those guys have a good one quality. Mike Klatt, who, I worked for the Olympics at NBC over in Seoul, but, all those guys I respected probably just because they were good people, and they wanted to see me succeed and help me succeed. And I appreciated that with them. And that's what, I try to do to other people that report to me, or like I say, or other colleagues. So just trying to be a good person in general is the biggest thing.
That you are, and so much more. I find this common denominator in your life, Keith, and that is, and we talked about this at the beginning, you being a walk-on in college for football, and this idea of always having to prove yourself, even after college football, having, in a way, sort of like a quote unquote walk-on mentality, and always feeling like you have to prove yourself. How do you think that's really been a key to your success as well?
Well, there's a saying in television, you're only as good as your last show, or you're only good as your last feature. So in a way, you're always trying to prove yourself, and, you don't want to become, lackadaisical or complacent, I guess is the word. So you always want to continue to strive and do more and do better. I don't know. That's the way I always look at it. You always have to have that edge, and it's just fighting complacency. You don't want to be like, oh, this is the way we've always done it type mentality. You want to, how can we tell a story different? How can we use technology to do stuff differently? How can we, edit it differently? What can we do to enhance it? Because, a lot of this stuff's been done. Let's not just rehash this stuff, but how do we keep moving forward?
Yeah, that you've been able to do. And the idea of taking on challenges and liking that and enjoying that and thriving on that. How outside of work, as you just mentioned, how you're able to do that with what you're doing now in changing things, making different edits, just trying to spice things up. But beyond a work perspective, Keith, where do you find yourself loving the most in taking on challenges and really testing yourself, if you will?
Well, it's always been the creative process itself. And also, working with other people and coming up and brainstorming, and how can we do that? Because I've always been of the mindset that, you can get different people to brainstorm, and I may have one piece of an idea, but when you start talking about it, they may have another piece of the idea. And eventually, that cream rises to the top, and you're like, yeah, this is what we need to do here. So it is that process of, going out and making something out of nothing, or I always call it, molding the clay. You have, you go out and shoot all this stuff, and then you have this one big clump of clay. Now let's start molding it and make it into a nice story.
What to you is a nice story? What are the qualifications that have to be met for that to sit with you?
Well, I always think, to me, a good story is about emotions, because I've always said that, not everybody can dunk a basketball, or, throw a football 70 yards, or, do some of these, professional athlete things. But, just like professional athletes, they have mothers and fathers and children. So it's the emotions that tie us all together, as their human side and our human side always align, I guess you would say. So a person can understand, LeBron James, or pick a star athlete, because of their human side, and, their father, and all that. So I try to tie that in, and, their story of growing up, because people understand those, just like what you're talking to me now. People all have their own stories about that. What is the story of X athlete? How can we tell that? How can we bring out something that nobody he hasn't talked about before? So those are the things that I try to, get out there. Everybody knows his stats and all that stuff, but what are those other deep seated things? What made him? What did his mother and father tell him today, or her? Sorry, I want to get the women in here
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
So anyway, what is that early on thing that helped them through their career?
Which is kind of what I'm trying to do here with you, which is so
Right,
fascinating. Yeah.
exactly.
And so you talked about finding that emotion and how that's the one relatable thing in a story. As you said, there's a lot of athletic superiority out there that the common person might not be able to carry out themselves, but we all have those emotions. And when you look at your story, when do you find that those emotions have come out the most and that you've been able to hang on to them?
Mm, I don't know, just satisfaction, I guess. When when you put a lot of time, there's a lot of pre-production work that goes into this stuff, and the whole process of getting it done. And then, when you've done something good and it's really good, that's sort of like, you, lack of a better term, bird that, and that's your baby, and it's like, because there's a lot of work that goes into doing all that. So I guess that the satisfaction of knowing that all your hard work paid off, and hopefully people like it as much as you do.
How about the satisfaction of being a father?
Well, that's a whole different, set of circumstances, but, uh, believe me, my daughters are great. They care for me. They care about what I'm doing. So we all keep close tabs together and text, pretty much daily. So yeah, they're good. They're good for me. I hope I'm good for them. But yeah, no regrets on that.
No regrets. And I heard you say this earlier that you would drive snowmobiles. Where would be the most memorable snowmobile ride that you've ever gone on? Where were you? What was the landscape like around you?
Well, a lot of it, we grew up in a lake, so the lake was frozen in Southwest Michigan, so the lake would be frozen in the wintertime. So it was and across the field where we grew up, there was a small airport. So basically, a lot of our trips were around the lake, into the woods, over to the field, onto the airport. But one time we got really dumb and took our snowmobiles to town with very little snow. So we're on a railroad track trying to get back. And, in between there, the thing is just bouncing and banging. Of course, we have 2 or 3 people on a small sled. And anyway, we broke the back axle on this in the middle of the railroad tracks because we thought that was the quickest way home. But
How old were you when this happened?
I had to be 12 or something like that, 13,
So
somewhere.
you came home and then what did your family say to you?
I don't know, go fix it. We had to go get a truck and then go and figure out how to, push the sled to a road, and then, get it in the back of a truck. But that's the one thing. I was just, trying to take snowmobiles where they shouldn't be going, in the middle of a, little town.
Let me leave you with that was a really interesting answer. Let me leave you with this one last question, Keith. Where do you find that memories of your childhood come out the most even now? Things that you enjoyed doing as a kid and where you find yourself, whatever you're doing, going back to those days and remembering something about it.
Oh, I do that often because I mean I love my childhood and growing up, my teens and my 20s. You're young, you have the rest of your life in front of you. I mean, I still are good friends with a bunch of my high school friends. In fact, we're playing golf this weekend. My college friends, we hang out all the time. So I don't know. I look back on that a lot and just it was a fun part of my life. Growing, and a lot of this stuff is like when you're young, it's like you have so much to learn and look forward to, and it's just like I don't know, it's an exciting time. I guess they make songs about being young forever type deal, so I can understand why. But to look back on specific things, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot, but just getting out and enjoying life is that's one thing about television. It's allowed me to, travel around the United States multiple times, travel internationally. It allowed me to get out to see a lot of the world and experience a lot of things. So, I don't know. It's just like one of those things, just getting out and always enjoying life and doing stuff. Don't sit in front of the TV. Well, unless it's sports that I've produced, so
Yeah, exactly. Of
yeah.
course. Or if there was a way to televise your golf outing this weekend, which
Oh,
which which
yeah.
if I'm watching, Keith, what am I going to learn from you?
I'm very erratic. I mean, I can I can hit some good shots, but I can hit some pretty bad ones too. So,
What is the best shot in golf you ever hit in your life?
oh, it's probably just I don't know. I've hit with a good roll. I got 300 on a drive, so but there's nothing better being, I don't know, 150, 170 yards out and then plopping it right on the green, just like the pros do every time. I went and watched the golf tournament once, and we were on one hole, and everyone was 170 yards out, and went boom, right on the green, right on the green, right on the green. I'm like, how do they do that? I guess that's why they're pros.
Well, you're a pro. Maybe it sounds like it could be if you take a hole, maybe that would make you a pro in golf. The whole thing is it's 18 holes. So you've got those good shots that you throw in, but even if you're not a golf pro per se, you're a pro when it comes to sports television. And I cannot thank you enough, Keith, for being a part of this conversation and for supporting this series. And as you said during this conversation, there's what has been written about you and learned about you from your peers. But I got a feeling, and what I wanted to see in this conversation, I think we were able to accomplish that, is that even your good friends that you're going to see this weekend, if they get a chance to watch this, they're going to learn something about you that they didn't know. And to me, that's the most gratifying part, one of the most gratifying parts of these conversations. Keith, thanks so much for being a part of this.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it.